What we are going to do is, I don't know where Karen is, but I've got somebody coming in and she's going to sit and take notes, and then we're going to compile try and edit it. My camera on my computer's not good enough. You know, it's really shit. It's the lowest bottom of the range computer. So I can't complain because my ex bought it for me, and when my other one crashed, so you know, you can't like look a gift horse in the mouth. But although he could have spent a little bit more money, but we won't go there at the moment.
I'm assuming he's not online at the moment, right?
He's not online, no.
Yeah.
And he's not likely to be online at any point, so that's absolutely fine. I'm not too fussed about that. But so yeah, the idea is to kind of like do a whole series of them. I mean, we're on about 25 or 30 at this point, I'm not quite sure. And then edit them, and then add in like the images and things that you sent, and try and package a whole lot and sell them on. I don't quite know when we're going to get there at that, you know.
If and when.
Requires money. Editing requires money, so I don't know. But yeah, we'll get there at some point. Listen, we've actually got to a point where I've now managed to get Zoom to take my money. So that in itself is progress, because to get the payment to go through, it took months. And eventually I found out that the address didn't match the credit card. So that's the reason it wouldn't work.
I have no clue what you're talking about.
Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. Nobody else does either.
You're paying for Zoom?
Yes, I pay. Well, you can pay for Zoom. If you don't pay for Zoom, you only get 40 minutes.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah.
So by the time everybody's come in the room and you said hello and shut up and whatever, would you shut up? It's a telephone. I mean, who phones a landline? What was I talking about? Oh, yes. So yeah, by the time everybody's come in the room and settled down and everything else, you've already lost your first 5 minutes. And then by the time you like run out, and so anyway, so if you pay them, you can have 3-hour meetings if you want to. We won't be doing that, I promise. But yes, you can.
And is it an exorbitant amount?
It's not an exorbitant amount. It works out at about 270 Rand a month, which is not overly huge. But if you actually sign up now, before the 16th, in fact, I think today probably is the last day, you save $60. So
$60
it's quite a substantial saving. So it worked out about 2,500 Rand for the year.
Not bad. We don't know how long these things are last anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, do you use Zoom at all? Much?
Once a week for diving presentations, and that's about it.
How do you dive? So Zoom accreditation.
Sorry?
How do you dive with Zoom accreditation?
No, not with a presentation.
Oh God, what's gone wrong? Sorry, I don't know what's gone wrong. I'm trying to get the thing to share for you. Oh, there we go.
There's a top-notch instructor in Malta that does presentations once a week that a few of us participate in and try and get some extra knowledge from.
Okay. Thank you for that. There are a couple of divers in the room I'm aware of. Okay, it's 5:06. Allan Maclean, welcome to Zoom in a Garden. Thank you for joining us. Fabulous to have you on board, and for all those amazing images you sent me. How did you get into diving in the first place?
I grew up in the old Transkei. Running in my veins, if you like. So every second weekend we would leave Mthatha, go down to the Wild Coast, muck about, fish, swim, snorkel, do whatever. So the sea was always in my blood. It's always been a part of me. I've had 1 or 2 bad experiences with the ocean, but it hasn't dampened my passion for all things blue, you know. So it's always been a part of me. I did my first diving course in 1990 in the Transkei, and the conditions were questionable. So we ended up doing the last dive in a river, which was pretty cool. We found these little miniature crayfish like stuck into the wall. And from that moment, I honestly have not looked back. It's a part of who I am. When I left the Transkei in '97 to come up to Durban, I actually thought I would never dive again. I sold all my kit, not knowing what actually happens in Durban. You know, Durban was this big city, and I'm from some little dorp in the Transkei, and I didn't even think to try and find out information about diving in Durban. So I sold all my kit, and I was dry for a couple of years in terms of not diving. And then,
as opposed to not drinking.
Okay. And then, I got back into it probably the same time as I was going through a bit of a rough personal time. So when I was going through my divorce, I needed another avenue to focus on, and diving took over. So since that time, which is probably 12 years, it's been a very large part of my life.
We went, when I was in standard 8, 9 or matric, I'm just trying to think, we actually went camping on the Wild Coast, and we couldn't find the campsite where we were supposed to be. So we ended up camping somewhere, and then I think there were about 12 of us, and then they got the tent out, and the instructions were in German, so nobody knew how to connect the tent. So we eventually ended up stringing the tent between 4 different cars and then just crawling in underneath it to go and sleep.
Might seem like a silly question, but were there any men in the group?
Yes, there were men in the group.
Then you should have found the campsite quite easily.
The majority of this room is female. Behave, okay?
I've noticed that. Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll turn your oxygen off.
Cool.
But I was going to say, before you so rudely interrupted me, it was one of the best holidays I've ever had. I had the most amazing tan because nobody brought water with. Nobody. They brought beers and wine and other stuff, not a bottle of fresh water between them. So we had to like send some poor little pickaninny every day to go and get us fresh water. And then the guys would dive and we would have fresh crayfish every day for lunch. It was fabulous. But don't
that coastline is still phenomenal in terms of scenery, and it's not overfished. It's pristine. Most of those places, you know, the further into Transkei that you go, the more pristine the area is.
It really was a wonderful holiday, but it was a lifetime ago. Because matric was a lifetime ago, and but it was amazing. Okay, so now we're back in Durban.
Yes.
We're divorced.
Or we're getting there. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And
why did you get back in the water?
Why did I get back in the water?
What caused it?
Well, it was just to have something to spend my time with. So even at that point, you know, I was only seeing my children every second weekend. So the alternate weekend was left with nothing to do. So what do? Find something to keep busy, go diving. And I was heading out on a rubber duck with a fellow by the name of Patrick Furma, who used to own a dive center here in Durban at Ushaka. And so named because its origin is unknown, and its landmark is the Cooper Lighthouse off Durban. So we were heading out there to do a dive, and Patrick said that he wanted to go and dive to see the coelacanths at some point. And then 3 months later, it's whatever time, early in the morning, he phoned me and he said he's got this plan. He wants to go and dive with the coelacanths in the July the following year. So I think this was in September. And in 8 months' time, he wanted to go and do an expedition to Jessa Canyon in Sodwana.
Okay, that was my next question. Where were the coelacanths?
Well, there's a habitat of them in Sodwana. So Jessa Canyon is the one place, and Diepgat Canyon is the other place. One of the shallowest that they've found one is in Diepgat. So Jessa Canyon is an old river mouth. So along our coastline, right probably from Mozambique right through to East London. In fact, probably further. There's 2 submerged shorelines. Many, many years ago, there was a shoreline 100 meters deeper than what it is right now. And then the second submerged shoreline is at 60 meters. So if you can think of that 100-meter mark where you had a river flowing into the ocean so many millions of years ago, and then global warming and the water rises and all the rest. So underneath at 100 meters or 116 meters in Jessa Canyon, You've got these like claw marks where the river used to flow and all the rubble would sort of create these canyons. And those little caves are where the coelacanth like to hang out. They need to have the habitat, which is the cave. They need to have cold water. They need to have currents. So 3 things need to play a part there. But with the coelacanths, they've been found on the 60-meter mark, and they've been found on definitely beyond the 100-meter mark. And the late Peter Tim, who was one of probably the guru with diving with coelacanths, he said if we could find the right habitat that matched what he had in Sodwana, you'd find the fish. And earlier this year, there was actually a find just off the south coast at 60 meters, finding a coelacanth.
Okay, that's quite amazing for an extinct fish.
Well, yeah, not extinct, but it's not guaranteed. I mean, we went to the canyon 4 times in 5 days, or in a week, and we never saw one. So it's like going to the Kruger and expecting to see a lion on every game drive. It doesn't happen.
It's okay. I've seen a lion every game drive, but I've never seen a leopard ever in the wild. Or a pangolin.
So anyway, we were. Well, Patrick hatched this plan to go to the coelacanths, and at that stage, I was only certified to go to 50 meters.
It's not very deep, is it?
Pardon?
It's not very deep, is it?
Well, it's beyond the recreational limit. So the recreational limit is deemed to be 40 meters, and anything beyond that is frowned upon, unless you have the right. I was only on the 50-meter mark, and I needed to get to a point where I could go to whatever depth I wanted to. So we hatched a plan to get the training done, the theory, the practical, to do 2 more courses in the next few months. That would then give me the license, so to speak. You've gone for your learners, then you get your driver's license. Only then do you start getting experience and actually learn how to start driving, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's the same as my view with technical diving. So we did the 2 courses. The last part of the second course, which is where you've got these massive cylinders on your back, and you've got two extra cylinders on each side, so 6 cylinders in total. And then we go out on the boat to do the final training and emergency drills and all the rest of it. And we'd done this particular day, so we'd go on one launch, do the dive, wait on the boat for an hour and a bit to get some of the nitrogen out of your system, and then do the second dive. And we did the first dive, and I thought that was it for me. I actually was not going to continue with the course. The skills and the things that I had to do and the stress that I was put under on that second to last training dive was phenomenal, and not in a good way. So when I got to the surface, in my mind, I resigned myself to the fact that I would not take that last step. I would not continue with my diving career. And then I was sitting on the boat, mulling this over and trying to think about how I'm going to tell this instructor that I'm no longer going to dive, you know? And then you start putting the puzzle pieces into place, and well, that's why I did that, and that's why I did that, and that's why I did that. So after an hour plus, I decided I would do that next dive and just see how it went. And it went like clockwork. I think the mindset is probably the biggest. The mind is probably the biggest thing to overcome with doing those deep technical dives, because if you panic in those situations, you're not going to make it. It's that simple. So anyway, so we finished the course, I think, in January of that year, and we had 5 months to crack on and I think what we decided to do from that point on was to invest a lot of time and financial resources, because it's fairly costly to dive the way we did to those depths because of what we put in the gas mix, which is helium. Helium is around 65 cents a liter, or it was at that stage, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but when you're diving with 3,500 liters, it adds up, So yeah, for us to do a 100-meter dive would be around 3,500 rand, and it's gone. There's nothing to show for it, besides something on the logbook, for example. So we went out on a particular dive. We're trying to do two technical dives a month, which may not seem like a lot, but that was the plan. And we pretty much did that at least. And we were doing a 60-meter dive off Durban, and I was getting cold, so I said to Patrick, I want to head up. And just as we started sending our buoy lines to the surface, in fact, we already sent them to the surface. We send these buoys up so that the boat on the surface can see where we are and keep an eye on us,
One hopes.
Yeah, it doesn't always happen like that. I will tell you a story about that. So as we're leaving and we're starting to go to the surface, we look down and there are these massive boilers from a ship underneath us. So we go back down and Patrick ties his buoy line onto that so he can use it he can mark the drop from the surface.
Yeah.
And we start going up again and the line came loose.
Oh shit.
So he went back down again. By that time, I'd reached a point where I could not stay. I only had so much gas left. We call it turn pressure. I'd reached the turn pressure. I had to go. There's no chance I'm staying and running out of gas. So I left Patrick. He went back down to the wreck to attach the line. And that was the last I saw of him on that dive. He then came up on that line all the way to the surface, from 60 meters to the surface. And I was obviously drifting with whatever current there was. And we ended up being 4 kilometers apart.
Wow.
Yeah. So another good thing with those kind of dives is that you always have 2 boats looking after you in case something like that happens, or in case there's an emergency. One boat can take the diver to the hyperbaric chamber, and the other one stays with the diver still in the water. So yeah, so that was the first wreck that we found, and we originally called it the John Ross wreck. It's been there for a long time. The boilers are still there, the ribs are still there, but at that point we had no clue of knowing what vessel it was. There's no big name plaque on it that says this. So we called it the John Ross wreck because when we surfaced, one of the landmarks was the John Ross block of flats of Durban, with that revolving restaurant.
So it's actually not that far offshore?
No, it's not that far. Our furthest wreck was 20 kilometers offshore, which was a pain in the backside to get to. So one of the things about finding the wreck is that you find this vessel and then you've got to try and get pictures of it and all the rest of it to try and identify it at some point, because that's quite cool to know, After much toing and froing and photos and trying to get into maritime archives, which we don't have that many of here in South Africa, that vessel was then later identified as the Sir Gordon, which was an old dredger that was sent up from East London to come and ply its trade here in Durban.
How long ago are we talking about? Sorry, not for the wreck, for you.
Pardon? How
long ago are we talking about was this dive?
7 years ago.
Okay.
So from that first find, there's just like you are an adventurer of note and you chartering or you're heading into uncharted territory and that kind of stuff, and you find this thing that hasn't been found before. It's absolutely amazing for you. I can try and explain it to you as I'm trying to now, but you won't get it. But
I'm just thinking maybe you're like the Indiana Jones of the sea,
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Is there treasure involved?
No,
Do you bring stuff up?
No, never. Our protocol has always been to try and get footage of the vessels or photographs of the vessels, and to try and entice people to come and see what we've seen. Come with us, get your training done. If you trained already, then let's do a few checkout dives and go down and we'll show you this treasure. But no, we don't bring anything back. Most of the vessels have been scuttled, so all the important bits have been taken off, like the submarine that we found at also off Durban. That had disappeared for 70 years. Nobody knew where it was. It was an old World War II submarine. Also found it on my first 100-meter dive, just by chance, with a current that took us straight into the submarine. So even with that vessel, all the important stuff. So if you think about it, the technology that we had back then was important to South Africa, and we couldn't allow that to get into anybody else's hands, whether it be radios on the vessel or sonar or anything like that. So what they did with that submarine is they took all the important bits off and took the carcass out to a certain point, which was 8 kilometers off Durban, off the bluff, and they torpedoed it through the center and sunk it down. Yeah.
So it didn't really disappear. It was disappeared.
Well, nobody knew where it was. We knew that there were 2 submarines off Durban. One was the Otis, and the other one's a Japanese submarine that's supposed to be around. We haven't found that yet.
Okay. I mean, I was hoping you'd find like bones and the captain down with the ship,
Like some hide and seek player from 1942.
Yeah, like hi. It's like let's dive on Halloween. He has a skull and crossbones.
That wouldn't be cool. I promise you, I wouldn't like to see that. I wouldn't be like it. So no, we haven't come across any bones and we haven't taken any treasures. The most recent wreck that we found was a fishing vessel, the FV Columbine, that sank in 1987. I think it caught fire and sank 20 kilometers off Durban. And we decided to go and dive it on I think it was one of the anniversaries of it sinking, sometime in January, I think it was. But I promise you that 20-kilometer boat ride in a little rubber duck or 2 rubber ducks was a pain in the backside.
Bouncing off the wooden floor.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And then, we're not even sure you're going to find the wreck, because what happens is that most of these marks that Patrick actually got were from fishermen. So when fishermen pin something on the GPS, they can see that there's a bright yellow or bright orange stripe on the fish finder that shows metal or a very hard surface, generally metal. But they don't actually want to fish on that place because then they'll get snagged. So they put the marks like 20, 30, 40 meters away from that mark. So when we get these marks from a fisherman, it's not a dead certainty that that's where we're going to find the vessel. There's still a bit of, and we've had many dives, probably more unsuccessful dives, definitely more unsuccessful dives than successful dives in terms of finding wrecks. I mean, if we've done 200 dives off Durban, those kind of dives, we've only found, I think Patrick found 10 and I found 8 of those with him. So it's definitely needle in the haystack type of stuff. So now we're heading out on a little rubber duck for 20 kilometers, heading towards Belito and beyond. Mine Justin's also on the boat, and he and I are saying it's time to turn around and go back for breakfast. And then just then Patrick's ferreting around with the anchor trying to find this wreck, and he hooks on and gives us the smile. He says we're good to go. So boom, off we went. So that was the most recent vessel that was found, most recent wreck that we found, 20 or 30 years in the water, 20 years in the water, I think. And that was obviously still the most intact. So we didn't get into the engine room because very small wreck, and we don't know what it's like in terms of how safe it is. Even the older wrecks have been around. You don't want to just go ferreting around inside there unless it's stable, because you don't want to be inside and something collapses, and then you're literally put your pants down. Yeah.
Okay, that's quite scary. Is it scary rolling around inside the belly of something that's sunk? I mean, do you feel any kind of like, it's going to sound weird, but do you feel any kind of like energy or like do you feel any kind of history when you're in it? Or like the presence of the people that were there?
I think that comes afterwards when you kind of find out what that vessel was like, or what it used to do in its day, and you can latch onto a bit of its own history. But at that time when you find it, you don't know. One of the wrecks that Patrick found was the Umzimvubu wreck, which Winston Churchill was on at some point, and he wrote a story about how uncomfortable it was to be on that wreck in his trip from Durban to East London, or East London to Durban. So it's nice to find out those important bits, But whilst you're down there, I think what's key is almost survival, I suppose, because you don't want to run out of air. You need to be very sharp.
Yeah, your focus has to stay strong.
And focus on certain things. So you can't exceed a certain amount of your gas. You can't breathe too much of your gas, otherwise time to go. Even if you've planned a dive for Because typically on a 100-meter dive, we'll spend only 16 minutes on the bottom.
Wow,
It'll take us
that's not a long time to spend there. I mean, so how long do you take getting down there?
4 minutes to get down.
Okay.
16 minutes on the bottom, 2 hours back up. So that's a typical
2 hours to get back 100 meters.
Yeah.
So what do you think about on those 2 hours when you're slowly like lifting up out of the water?
Peace and quiet. So many people say, so why do you do it? I mean, how do you go and spend that much time in the water? You know, what do you think about? And generally the people that ask those questions are married men. And I'll say to them, well, have you ever thought about having a nice bit of quiet time to yourself? And they say, yes. So, well, come diving, because you get 2 hours whenever you go there, you know. It's just peace and quiet. You know, sometimes you'll get a shark or you'll get some kind of activity in the water. Other than that, it's just to get to a safe level where you can relax a bit. But those first decompression stops, you need to be on top of your game. Like I said before, you've got, on those deeper dives, you've got 4 cylinders on your sides. You need to know which ones are carrying which gas. If you change to the wrong gas at the wrong depth, you will end up in trouble. So you need to really be totally sharp when it comes to that and on point. I've had 3 close friends pass away because of things going wrong on deeper dives. And it happens very quickly. So if you don't have your wits about you, you will end up in trouble.
What about this sea life when you're down there? I mean, do you see a lot of really amazing stuff?
Well, one of the things, if you're talking specifically about wrecks, there's a type of fish that normally loiters around those wrecks. They're called pinky grunters. So if you see them, you're normally in the vicinity of some kind of rusty metal happening. So those small fish are around. In the wrecks we've got down the south coast here, the produce and the Nebo, there's generally quite big darger salmon inside there. Also, in the produce, you'll find brindle bass, which is almost the same size as the VW beetle, a massive fish.
That's a big fish.
When we dived the Otis, which is that submarine, on the 3rd dive, when we went inside as far as we could, the whole inside, if you picture the inside of a car, for example, every single inch of that surface was moving red. And we've got these little shrimps here in Durban called Durban dancing shrimps, which are red when you put a light on them. That's their proper color. Every single inch of that inside of that submarine was just shrimp, flat out. It looked like curtains moving, you know, blowing in the wind.
Okay, is that creepy at all?
Maybe for them, seeing us where we shouldn't be, but not so much for us. Yeah.
Can you eat them?
I'm sure you could probably eat them. You might need a lot of them to fill you up, but you probably could eat them.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we'll see sharks, yeah, from time to time. We've seen a whale.
Oh, what about a whale shark? Those beautiful big creatures. Do we have those here?
I've seen one off Scotborough. Sorry, off Umkomaas. I've seen one there, and I've seen them up in Sodwana and Mozambique, but I haven't seen them for a long, long time. Same thing with manta rays. Haven't seen them in ages, and well, not locally, not in these waters anyway.
Is that a bad sign?
I think that generally, if we have a very strong sardine run, I think that indicates a healthy ocean and all the predators, big and small, are around. And I don't think that we've actually had a proper run for a long time. So maybe it is an indication of
global warming.
Yeah. We generally won't see those on wrecks anyway. I saw some nice mantas off a place called Manta Point in Bali last year. And in shallow water, 5 meters. I've ever encountered in the water is a tiger shark. Absolutely beautiful animal. And also we don't see them too often, but when you do, you can consider yourself blessed. Honestly, they are really, really awesome.
Is it safe to run into something like that?
I think so. I've been nipped once, but that was by a blue shark in Cape Town.
Rude.
And we were warned beforehand. They said to us, because the blue shark is like a Jack Russell, he's always in your face and he's like all over the place, you know. And they said to us that you need to cover every part of visible flesh with something, with neoprene. So put gloves on, or put a hoodie on, put booties on. And I said I wasn't going to wear gloves because I was working at camera. And we got to the end of the dive, however long it was, and I took my hand off the camera just to tell the dive master that I was going up. And out of nowhere, this fish came and latched onto my hand and then spat me out. So there was a bit of blood. Didn't need stitches. Didn't want to swallow me. Didn't want to bite my hand off. So
Clearly, you don't taste very nice.
Yeah, probably not, eh?
And in terms,
I've also done the great white shark dive down in Cape Town, which was in a cage, so it was pretty boring. And I've never been fortunate enough to see a great white in its natural habitat outside of a cage. So I don't know what that would be like, but I think it must be quite an adrenaline rush.
particularly when it takes like one bite, adrenaline rush over.
I don't think they want to bite us. I think that they bite us as a mistaken identity. I don't think that they're out to hunt us, you know.
I saw Megadon.
I'm happy for you. I don't know where some of those stories come from.
What about close shaves and dangerous happenings? I mean, have you had any sort of near accidents underwater?
There were two incidents. So the one was a 60-meter dive off Durban, and one of the things that you really don't want to have when you're doing technical diving is a rapid ascent. So there were three of us on the dive. We went down to, I think it was the Kate wreck, and there was a massive current going, and we had to pull ourselves down the anchor line. So really, really working hard to get to 60 meters with all your kit on. And within 5 minutes of getting to the bottom, I had reached my turn pressure. So I'd overbreathed my gas, and I couldn't stay. So I told Patrick and Reese that it was time to go. And we left the bottom after about 7 minutes. So if you're diving 60 meters on air, you've only got about that amount of time before you go into decompression. But as I started going to the surface, I had a rapid ascent and I couldn't control it. It happened so quickly. So from, let's say, just after leaving the bottom, 50 meters to the surface took minutes, and it should have taken about an hour in terms of a proper decompression dive. The saving grace there was that we had not spent a lot of time at that depth. So generally, if that happens, you would go back down to your first decompression stop, which might have been 21 meters or 27 or 24 meters, and then redone all your decompression stops by 1.5 times. I didn't do that. I went straight to the surface, got on the boat, and I started breathing oxygen. And I think I'm fine. I've survived and had no complications after that. So quite lucky, considering two of the other people that I mentioned earlier that have passed from technical diving that I know or knew. They spent 30 minutes there, and they also had rapid ascents to the surface, so they missed out on 1 hour's decompression, and both of them unfortunately passed. So that was the one incident, but I was quite lucky with that. The second one wasn't really an incident at depth, but what happened on the surface. So we had gone to do a dive down at a place called Protea Banks, which is on the south coast, which is well known for its shoals of hammerhead sharks. And we had dived on the Saturday, and the Sunday we were going out early because the wind was coming up, and we wanted to get a dive in before the wind really picked up. It was a northeasterly wind that was coming through. So we went out, which was probably the first mistake. We should have just stayed home and had coffee and breakfast. But we pressed on and we went out. I think there was a group of 9 of us.
Are there any girls in this lot?
With this group, there was one lady, yes. Yeah. So we went and we did the dive, which was a 35-meter dive. And what happened is that the current was really, really screaming. And when we got to the bottom, the dive master tied his buoy line off on a bit of the reef so we could hang in this little crevice or gully and get a bit of protection from the current. And in doing so, what happened is that the current pulled the buoy line, the buoy, below the surface of the water.
Right.
And the skipper on the surface then lost sight of us and didn't know where to look. He thought we were drifting with the current, but we'd actually stayed in that little crevice. So that was the second issue, the second thing that we shouldn't have done. Then when we got to the surface, we looked around and there were these massive walls of water breaking on us. We were about 10 kilometers out to sea off Shelley Beach.
Well, that's frightening.
And no boat to find us. So we drifted for the first hour, and then we dropped our weight belts to try and stay a bit buoyant. And all the time just getting pounded and pounded and pounded by these massive waves. And try to move slowly inshore, but ultimately the current was just, and the wind was just taking us down towards the Transkei again. You know, we were eventually picked up 32 kilometers from where we were dropped. We had drifted for 4 hours, and we were picked up by a very clever fisherman who had his own buoy in the water and kind of plotted how far he thought we had drifted in that current, and he was almost spot on. So 4 hours adrift in big seas wasn't so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, did you ever kind of feel that you weren't going to make it and start thinking about things that you should have done? Regrets, no. I have a few.
Fortunately not for me. I think never on her own. Two of the men in the group were always with her, holding her and supporting her. But I think that her and her husband who were on the dive, I think they probably got the biggest shock, if you like. And added to them, although they both dived since then, from what I understand. And the other person who took a bit of a caning on that drift was my nephew, who was he must have been in his late 20s at that point in time, I think. But his problem was that he had been out drinking until 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, not clever.
And no, very not clever at all. So he definitely, without question, thought that his time was up. We actually threw a buoy line to him, and one at a time we would tow him whichever direction we were going, so we didn't lose him in the ocean, you know. But yeah, aside from those two, I've been pretty fortunate, I think. Yeah, considering what we do.
Do you have a day job? Yes,
I do insurance work to pay the bills.
Yeah.
I've also been very, very blessed with that, and a bit of a sideline, I suppose. But now during lockdown, there are lots of people that aren't as fortunate as a lot of us are, you know. And there's a group of us that's been very fortunate and very blessed to be able to assist other people who aren't as fortunate as us. So definitely the insurance side of it has worked well for me and for a few of the other people that are blessed. And then aside from the insurance work, I do some scuba instructing as a scuba instructor, and I try and stay fit. I'll do 4 to 5 gym sessions a week now at home, and 2 or 3 bicycle rides now during level 4 and 3. So try and stay fairly healthy. I used to do a bit of running, but I'm not going to even attempt to run with a mask on. I don't think it's that healthy.
Yeah, apparently it's not very safe to run with a mask on. You're breathing the carbon dioxide back in. Is the wine finished?
No, it's not finished.
I was just wondering if you kind of like lost the glass somewhere.
I don't know where these. I mean, I've seen people running with a mask on. It's not comfortable. Even when I go for a cycle, it's not comfortable. It doesn't make sense to me.
Do you have any exciting images to share with us?
I would have to plug things in, and I'm not sure we'll get to that point right now. I can show you maybe some of the stories that's been written about us, maybe.
Go on, show us.
So typically what we nothing fails. So we'll have 2 torches, we'll have 2 computers, 2 cutting devices, 2 regulators, plus the extras on the deco cylinders. The one thing that you can't have two of is what?
I have no idea.
The
Two
brain.
brains.
So that's why you want to be diving with a buddy. So if you do something that's not quite correct, that he'll help you. But so we have.
So you have to dive with a sensible buddy as opposed to just a jawler.
Well, you want to be diving with somebody who trusts you with his life or her life.
Okay.
And vice versa.
I must have a bit bung to dive. I don't know if I. But
I thought that was a bottle of gin you were down in there.
That's actually vodka. Check. Neat.
So we will typically have two of these. Well, this is my choice. Two computers. So again, if the battery goes flat in one, you've got the second one, and you'll rely on that. If that then goes pear-shaped, you have a very untidy handwritten dive plan. So this was that was a dive plan to the Otis at 102 meters. And that particular dive would have got us out the water on 101 minutes, so just after an hour and 40 minutes. Is it? Yeah, an hour and 40 minutes. So that we'll keep in our pockets in case both computers fail, which I suppose is a possibility, you know.
Okay, so hang on. You keep it in your pockets. Did you write it on the surface, or you have this magic pen underwater?
No. So you'll do your plan on land to make sure that certain checks and balances, that you've got enough gas for the dive, that you've got the right oxygen percentage in the mixture for the depth, and you've got enough helium in the mix as well. Helium, the oxygen will tell you how deep you can go, or you'll use the oxygen content to limit your depth depending on the partial pressure. The helium will tell you how sharp you're going to feel at depth. So you take out all the nitrogen and you replace some of that nitrogen with helium, and you remain focused. You don't get that narcotic effect like on a normal dive where you're doing every 10 meters after a limit of after 20 meters. It's like having a gin. So they call it the gin effect. So you start getting a bit narked as you go down deep, unless you take some of that narcotic gas out, which is the nitrogen, and you replace it with something else, which is the helium. So we write those plans. We do that plan on the surface. We put it into the computer. Just in case.
Is it tiring? I mean, the reason I asked is like when you get back to the surface. We were in Mexico, and we spent the day on a catamaran, and it was taking us out to a coral reef. And then they stopped the catamaran and said, right, so you'll put on your snorkels and whatever, and then swim out to the reef, snorkel around the reef, and then swim back. So I got in the water, and then I started swimming towards the reef. And I kind of got halfway, and I looked back, and the cat was over there. And I thought, shit, I've still got to get to the reef, swim around the reef, come back up and get back to the cat. This is not going to happen. I'm not fit enough for that. So, I mean, how do you feel after you've been down 100 meters for 3 hours?
Yeah, you don't want to do anything. You don't want to exert yourself. You want to just chill. And also you don't want to have things like hot showers or a hot bath, because when you do that, if there are bubbles in your system, with the heat, they expand, which is not what you're after. So you really just want to chill. I mean, what we would do on most days after a dive like that is we'd go and have a beer.
And a braai.
Yeah, depending on where we are, but I mean, that's pretty much what we'd do. But obviously, if you're doing more of those dives the next day, then you don't want to be on any kind of alcohol whatsoever. You want to just keep it clean and tidy and focus on self-preservation, I think.
Guys, are there any questions for Allan? Allan, the other one, I know that you were an army diver. Do you not have anything you want to ask Allan? Allan and Allan?
Sounds like a very clever fellow.
My other brother, Daryl. Actually, let me just make sure he's still in the room. Colleen, you're a diver. Any questions? Kerry, you're always book. Are there any questions? Otherwise, I'll just carry on boring the shit out of him myself. Who takes those photos? Because I mean, the photos are pretty. The ones that I shared with the group, everything was really amazing.
It depends on which ones. I don't remember which ones you shared. Are those the same ones I would have sent you, or did you get them on Facebook?
I shared them all with everybody. I put them either on I shared everything this morning.
So
That really smart one of you in the suit in the water. Is that a fake image, or were you actually in a suit?
No, that was one of the magazines, the local magazines here did an article on me after we did the coelacanth dives. So they said they wanted me in a suit. So I grabbed my wetsuit and I said, cool, I'll put it on. And they said, no. We have a different plan. So we went to one of the dams here, a couple of k's away, and I put the suit and tie on, and they took the photos. Yeah, so
it's a very cool picture.
Yeah, it was very cold water, I might add. There was nothing on it. Well, there was nothing thermal on underneath that suit, so it was just that suit. Yeah.
So it was a really small day. What is the total cost of one of your technical dives? Kerry, is that per head or overall?
Sorry?
I'm just asking Kerry. I'm following up her question.
Sorry,
it was a question.
For 100-meter dive, Mark, generally with those dives, there were either 2 or 3 of us. There weren't that many people. You want to keep the group small, so it's easy to control. So whether it was 2 of us or 3 of us, my cost for that dive was around 3,500 rand.
Okay, is that per dive? Or for the weekend?
Dive.
Okay.
No, per dive. So
okay.
You're paying for 2 boats. You're paying for support divers that you cannot go without. If there's problems, they need to be in the water to help you. So you're paying for their time. You're paying for their gas. You're paying for the fuel for the 2 boats to come out. So all of that. But the biggest expense for us that dive on open circuit is the helium cost. Because like I said, it's 65 cents a litre, but then you put 3,500 litres into your different cylinders, and it definitely adds up,
Okay. Does that answer your question, Kerry? I feel like I'm talking to myself when I say stuff like that and nobody answers me.
If there's open circuit, which is what we generally dived with, which is where you have like these type of cylinders. I don't know if you'll be able to see it here. So those type of cylinders on your back, what we would call open circuit. So as you breathing, you breathe out, and all the gas leaves you and heads up to the surface, and it's wasted. You do get rebreathers, which recycle the air that you expel and clean it through a scrubber, and then add a bit more O2, and you keep on cycling that same gas in the loop, so you don't waste as much as what we do, which is a lot more cost effective on the dives. But the problem is that you still have to outlay 120,000, 140,000 rand to buy the machine.
Wow.
And then you buy the machine, and every so often it has to be sent back to overseas to get serviced. So you have a dry period of a month or 6 weeks before your machine comes back to you. And then also it's more finicky. So it's almost set out to, if you like, to kill you. You have to be really, really sharp in putting the thing together and assembling it before each dive, and also monitoring the computer that you have. So we've been on dives here where we've had 6 divers, a group of 3 open circuit and a group of 3. The current is flying, the water's dirty, and maybe even a little bit cold. Out of 3 dives, the only people that made it to the bottom were the open circuit divers, because you take a breath, you know it's there, it's comfortable, and off you go. The rebreathers have to monitor their PPO2, have to change set points and all sorts of intricate things. And when you're putting yourself down an anchor line, you overbreathe that loop. It's not cool. So on those dives, it was 3 for 3. The only people that got to the bottom on those 60-meter dives were the open circuit divers. So the rebreather definitely has its place, but it's not for everybody, and it's not for every condition, every type of condition. Well, and of course, it's going to cost you the same as a small car.
I'm going to carry on sculpting instead. Okay, that's kind of expensive enough for me, and I don't have to worry about my breathing while I'm doing it. I can just sort of hyperventilate because it's not coming out the way I want it to. And then, on a personal level, I have a question on my phone. Have you remarried?
No, I'm not.
Do you have a girlfriend?
I do.
Well, then you're not getting his number, girls. Sorry.
Funny. we actually assume, we thought that might be a question. We should get her in here to come and answer a question.
It's nice. Well, at least I can answer them. Like, you know, behave, girls. Does she also dive? Does your girlfriend dive?
She's not a diver at this point.
Oh, so you're actually like coercing her.
Yeah. I'm throwing little tidbits into the swimming pool, asking her to go and fetch them for me.
I think you have to be a special kind of breed to want to dive. It can't be. I mean, you're not meant to be down there. You know, it's kind of like astronauts. You've got to be a special kind of breed because you're not meant to be up there either.
Yeah, astronauts, I use that. More people have actually been to Mars than have been to like 125 meters. I think there's some kind of a thing about that. So it's almost like that is our last frontier, you know.
You and Star Trek.
Yeah, you want to go to places that nobody's been to, then get into diving. Go find places, you know, and don't go to the normal sites that are, you know, they've got 10 boats going out every hour on the hour, you know, like Sedona Bay, certain places like that where it's just so commercialized. Take your money, spend it wisely, and go and find a proper place. I mean, one of the most amazing wrecks I dived was in Egypt. I hated getting there because it was 40 kilometers of massive seas to get there.
On a rubber duck?
Pardon?
On a rubber duck?
No, that was on a liverboard. So we were out for 10 days, but still, it was not comfortable. But the wreck made it worthwhile. So you actually have to go through all that pain and suffering to get to these faraway places and to enjoy the pristine environment that's down there.
Okay, look, it sounds amazing, but it's definitely not for me. The thought of just actually being cold underwater doesn't appeal in the first place.
Yeah, but you can, I mean, on the 2nd of January this year, we did a recreational dive in Sedona Bay. I think I was down for 130 minutes, so just over 2 hours. I think that's what it was. And I was in baggies and a rash vest, so it's not like it's icy cold, you know. And in fact, for us here in Durban, our best time to dive is winter now, because there's so little rain, so there's no river runoff, and there's so little wind. So the conditions are actually pristine. If you can tolerate that little bit of cold water, then you'll have a fantastic time. This is the time right now to dive, if it wasn't for Corona, of course.
Has it interfered with diving? Can you dive at the moment, or is it also prohibitive?
Yeah, for some strange reason, it's still prohibited. We thought it was going to get opened up now in level 3, and now they're saying still level 2. So no, we still dry unless you're in the swimming pool, which is quite sad because, I mean, it's like the migration of the wildebeest in North Africa. We've got our sardine run that's actually happening now. It looks like it's going to be a decent one for a change. And we're in lockdown. We can't go diving.
So would you dive in the middle of a sardine run and just like have the sardines come past you? That sounds quite exciting.
I don't think I'd be right in the middle of the sardines because the sharks they won't know the difference. I mean, they come up through the bottom and just smash up through. So if you're in the way, they're going to eat you or bite you.
Oh, look, big sardine.
So what you want to do is, and people do it all the time. I mean, it's a
Sorry, my screen's frozen at the moment. I actually have no idea what you're saying. Still frozen. Okay, my screen is up. Oh, he's frozen. Okay, you were frozen because my screen was frozen. I don't know if it was me, but you were frozen. See, the water's cold after all. It's like an after effect. So what did you say?
I was saying that with a sardine run, with a bait ball, you don't want to be in that center of the bait ball. You want to be on the periphery and get photos of a shark smashing the bait ball, or a whale breaching, or dolphins hitting it, or the birds dropping it. You don't want to be in that mix of what's happening there. You want to be on the outside.
Have you swum with dolphins?
Yes, in Sedona.
How magical. See, now that's magical for me.
Yeah, I think also, so my son's also a diver. He's done quite well already. My daughter hasn't taken to it yet, but I think when she gets her first glimpse of a dolphin up close, then she'll be in the water and she'll be more in it to win it than I've ever been. I promise you. It's a magical thing. The tiger sharks, the dolphins, the whale sharks, and the mantas are spectacular.
Okay, I swam with dolphins in Mexico, so I know that is a very magical experience. And I think if there are no more questions, we should actually let you go. We've been talking to you for an hour already.
Fantastic.
And we're all, and you're still awake. Well done.
Yeah.
Alan, I can't thank you enough. It's been absolutely amazing. I mean, it's just, you've opened up a whole world to me that I basically don't know exists. And cool. Probably will never know exists because it's not something that I'm inclined to do. I'm not a thrill seeker. I don't jump off mountains, and I certainly don't think I'm going to be deep sea diving at any point in my life.
You might need to just find a release. So, there's another group that I'm involved with called the Handicapped Scuba Divers of South Africa. So you have people with proper ailments, people in wheelchairs, people who are almost totally blind, people with proper disabilities that perhaps used to be divers before they became disabled, and they still carry on diving, and that is phenomenal. So there's no reason why any able body cannot get in the water and experience it even just once. So okay. That's you.
Is that me? Who said I was able-bodied?
But even if you're not, you can still do it.
I have large floaters, Alan. The chances of me going down are like really slim. Okay.
Put some extra weight, you'll be fine.
Yeah. The last thing in the world I need is extra weight after lockdown, but I know what you mean, a weight belt. Thank you, my sweetheart. It's been absolutely amazing. Guys, before I let you all go, can I just run through the rest of the week with you? If I could remember what the rest of the week was. What's the rest of the week look like, guys? Okay, so tomorrow, we're chatting to Pierre Duplessis. He's called the Dissident Preacher. He's a motivational speaker and all sorts of things. So really interesting guy, nice to chat to. Wednesday, I'm chatting to journalist Philippa Garson about her book Undeniable, which is about South Africa during the 90s, when Mandela coming out of jail, people getting necklaced, and a lot of strife, and the third force. Basically, the book is about the hunt for the third force. Thursday, what's happening on Thursday? Oh, Thursday, I'm chatting to the fabulous Gus Silber. He's just had a book out, but we're not actually chatting about the book. We're chatting about learning during lockdown, things that he's learned, and some amazing stuff. He's really wonderful to talk to, and I have to keep him on a tight leash, otherwise he'll take away. Friday, we're doing the El Camino with Francois Hayden, and Saturday, we're doing glass work with Lothar Botcher. So he's an artist with the most incredible glass work. So it's a very exciting week, lots happening. Hope to see more and more of you. Have a wonderful evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us at Zoom in the Garden, which is being rebranded, by the way. I can't bear the Zoom in the Garden, but Alan, be good.
Perfect.
Dive safely.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Cool. Take it easy, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.